Welcome everybody. Jai Jinendra Badane. We're going to allow people to switch on their videos if they so wish. Just remember that these recordings are then stored and shared on YouTube. So if you are comfortable with that and happy with that, the YouTubes are shared with members of this group. But just be aware of that. According to GDPR regulations, we need to inform you that, as you all know, this is being recorded. The reason why we have switched over to this format is that I think everybody enjoys interaction. And if you want to keep your video on, that's great. If not, it's your choice. But whenever you ask a question and raise your hand, it may be useful. And it helps me if I can see all of you whenever you feel comfortable with that. Okay. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and then we'll start with the prayer as usual. Let's start with the prayer. Namo Aryantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loye Sabba Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabvesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarasura Surendra Mahito, Virambudha Sansrita. Virena Bhiyata Swakarmanichayo Viraya Nityam Nama Vira Tirthamidam Pravtamatulam Virashighoram Tapo Vire Sri Druti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manovrutti Parshanath Sri Estu Vaha अंगूठे अमृतवसे लब्धितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. Just reminder as usual what we are trying to do with these classes. Internalize and incorporate in life. Listen, reflect, debate, question. Okay. So, as you all know, the topic is Barhesar Bahubali Sajjai, which is recited in the morning Pratikraman on a regular basis by all those who do the Pratikraman in the morning. So, let's just remind ourselves of this beautiful Sajjai. Barhesar Bahubali Abhay Kumaro Dandan Kumaro Sirio Aniya Utto Ai Mutto Nagadatto मेज थुली बद्दो वैर ऋषि नंदी सेन सिंह गिरी कैवन्नो असुकोसल पुंडरियो के सी कर कंडु हल विहल सुदंसण साल महासाल साली बद्दो पद्दो दसन पद्दो पसन चंदो जस पद्दो जंबु पहु वंक चूलो गय सुकुमालो अवंती सुकुमालो दन्नो इलाई पुत्तो चिलाई पुत्तो अबाहुमणि अज्जगिरी अज्ज रखिय अज सुहत्थी उदाय गो मणगो काले सुरी संभो पज्जुनो मूलदेवो पभवो विणहु कुमारो अद कुमारो दड पहारिय सिजंस कूर गड्डू सिजन भव मेह कुमारो ए माई महासत्ता दिंतु सुहम गुण गणे हिम संयुक्ता केसिम नाम गहणे पावबंदा विलयम जंती सुलसा चंदन बाला मनोरमा मयण रेया दमयंती नमया सुंदरी सिया नंदा पद्दा सुभद्दाय राय मई ऋषिदत्ता पौमावई अंजना सिरी देवी चिट्ठ सुचिट्ठ मिगावई पभावई चिलना देवी बंबी सुंदरी रूपिणी रेवई कुंती शिवा जयंती देवई दोई धारणी कलावई पुष्प पुष्पचुलाय पौमावई गौरी गंधारे लक्ष्मणा सुसीमाय जम्बुवई सत्यभामा रूपिणी कणहठ महिषियो जहा चखाय जखदीनाय जहा चखाय जखदीना भुआ तह चेव भुवदीनाय सेना वेणा रेणा भैणियो थुली भद्दस इच्चाई महासयो जयंती अकलंक सील कलियाओ अजवी वजई जासिम जस पड़ होती हुणे सयले. So, as you all must remember now, this Sajjai has got 13 stanzas or 13 gathas. We are still on the first gatha, and so far we have listened to the stories of a few of the characters and the reason why they are remembered on a daily basis. The Sajja is a contemplation on self or Atma. There are many different Sajjais, as you all know. And what we are doing here, Swadhyay, is Sajjai of a kind. Just a reminder of what the Sajja is about. So until now, we have listened to the story of Bharat Chakravarti, his brother Sri Bahubali, the chief minister of King Shrenik, Sri Abhay Kumar, Sri Dandan Kumar, the son of Krishna, Vasudev, Sri Shriyak, the brother of Stuli Bhadra, and the contemporary of Chanakya. And last week we heard the story of Sri Arnika Putra Acharya. If you are reading other literature that describes the stories, then you may have come across a slightly more widened version of Arnika Putra Acharya's story. And in that context, there are some more details in other sources that I have looked at as well. And there is something that's particularly interesting that I won't go into the details of, but it has got relevance to a fairly recent history after Bhagwan Mahavir. Uh, the son of King Shrenik, Abhay Kumar was one, but he had a brother called Konik who inherited the throne of King Shrenik. And there's a lot to learn from his life as well. And Konik had a son called Uday Raja. Now they're very different people. Konik had a very troubled life. Uday was very spiritually elevated and he had a very different life. And he establishes a place called a new town called Patliputra. And there is a story around Patliputra, Patali, Patli, Patliputra, which revolves around this particular story of Arnika Putra Acharya as well. And that city of Patliputra had become very famous for a lot of reasons, including the aftermath of Arnika Putra Acharya's achievement of Keval Gnan and achieving Nirvana more or less at the same time when he got wounded by this spear thrown by Yakshini, who was the same soul as his wife from a previous life, and she had a lot of hatred for him. Now, just something very quickly that I wanted to explore here. We hear these stories about our associations and our relationships with people who are close to us. We've heard this kind of relationship in the life of Bhagwan Parshvanath. With those of you who have heard that story, that Bhagwan Parshvanath and Kamat had a relationship over several lifetimes, and that relationship joined them together in hatred from Kamat's side, not from Bhagwan Parshvanath's side, but that was one very strong emotion that joined these two souls together. There is a very similar story about Gun Sen and Agni Sharma called Samraditya Kevali Charitra, which is a fantastic story which we have tackled in these classes, in the other classes that I do over a period of 12, 14 weeks. So that is another one. And there is stories of good, positive relationships. Those of you who might know, there's a king called Nad and Damayanti. They had a relationship over several lives, which was a loving relationship. Bhagwan Nemnath, the 22nd Tirthankar, and Rajul or Rajimati, they had a relationship over 9 lives, and that was a positive, loving relationship in the previous lives. So there are all these associations that this particular story suggests to us to reflect on, that people we come close to and get together in our lives are people that we have had some kind of a relationship. And if we want to carry on with a loving relationship, then the stories teach us that it is very important to recognize how much we concentrate on the negative aspects and the conflicts that we have during our lives with these our relationships or our relations, maybe father and son, maybe husband and wife, maybe brothers, maybe sisters, maybe mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Whatever happens during our lives, which brings us in close contact, if we carry on in a negative vein and reflect and get upset and angry about the negative aspect of those relationships without making a conscious effort to actually form an understanding and forgive and forget, we can carry that hatred in subsequent lives that will surely continue to trouble us. And all these stories actually teach us those things. So it does actually throw a light on how we react to people, but also what we need to do when our minds seem to react in a certain way. So if it is positive and loving, then we need to encourage that and see the good in other people. When it seems to suggest something negative and a feeling of dislike and hatred, then we need to curb that, because otherwise these things will continue to trouble us lives after lives. And there are many, many other examples of similar stories. So just very uh, in short about what happened to Arnika Putra Acharya towards the end of his life. I mean, he uh, retained his composure, and that event actually pushed him towards achieving Keval Gnan and then moksha. But obviously the Yakshini, his wife from previous life, surely acquired some very bad karmas that she would be suffering from in future lives. The story today is about Ati Muktak Muni. Here again, the story is short. What we will learn seems to be a simple event, but there are aspects of this story that we need to explore and dig deeper into. So let's listen to this story. What I've given here are just some pointers. So please listen. Not everything is on the slide. The slide is just a reminder to me and to you of this great person who is in fact, as the story goes, just an 8-year-old child from our aspect, but spiritually much, much more advanced than any one of us will be in a long time. Ati Muktak was the son of King Vijay and his wife, Queen Srimati. And King Vijay was the king of a town or a city called Pedalpur. At the age of 8, once, while he was playing outside, Guru Gautam Swami, who is the chief disciple of Bhagwan Mahavir, is going from house to house to seek alms in this particular town of Pedalpur. And Ati Muktak saw him and was so happy to see him and was so impressed by Gautam Swami, who was a very impressive, very holy person who anybody who saw him would be very impressed, but this child became extremely happy at seeing him and suddenly felt that he wanted to follow and do what Guru Gautam Swami was doing. So he says to Guru Gautam Swami that I want to be like you. I want to do what you are doing. And Guru Gautam Swami says, Ki, you are still a young child, and what I am doing, the path that I am following, is a very tough path. It's not an easy life. It is very difficult. But this 8-year-old boy has got it in his mind that that's exactly what he wants to do, and he wants to follow that path. And he goes back to his parents and independently just keeps on pushing them. He says, look, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. And he was a very wise person that will understand a bit later when we talk more about the story. And after some time, both his parents agreed, and he went back to Guru Gautam Swami and became a monk and a disciple of Guru Gautam Swami. So from being a householder, a prince, having lived a very happy life, material life, he has become a monk. And he follows the vows that he has taken very particularly and religiously. But he's still a young child, and once very early in the morning, he gets very hungry. And he goes out early in the morning to seek alms, to find food from the houses of different people in the city that they were in. He comes to the house of a Shreshti or a big businessman, and the lady of the house, who is the wife of this big merchant's son, comes out, and she's surprised that a monk has come to her door so early in the morning. So she asks, Ke matyarma, meaning, why are you here so early? And a bit sarcastically, she says, Bau modu thai gayu che, meaning, have you been delayed and is it so late? So she's asking him that, why are you out so early to seek food? But also she's posing a different question, that why are you a monk at such a young age? આટલી નાની ઉંમરમાં દીક્ષા લઈ બેઠા તેના કરતા કંઈક ઉંમર થવા દીધી હોત તો શું ખોટું હતું. So she is suggesting that you are too young to become a monk. So why so early? So in some ways she is asking him, why are you out seeking alms so early in the morning? Have you been delayed and is it so late? But her other question with the same words is that, why are you a monk so early in your life? And you could have waited a bit longer when you're older. So Atimuktak Muni, who is very wise and has digested the wisdom very well, says, and the words that are described here in Gujarati is, "Hun je janu chu, te nathi janto." What I know that I do not know. Any guess of what he means by these words? So in response to this question from this lady of the house who has come out to give him alms, to give him food, and asking this question, કેમ અત્યારમાં બહુ મોડું થઈ ગયું છે? He says, હું જે જાણું છું તે નથી જાણતો. What does he mean by that? Anybody? Okay. What his
If you just
response?
raise your hand, sorry, Ajipai, if anyone wants to just raise their hand using the raise hand button to answer the question, you can, we'll unmute you.
Yeah. Anybody? Okay. No worries. Let me answer the question.
Sorry, we've got Parrot Pie who's raised his hand.
Great. Okay, Bharat Bhai.
Pranam Ajit bhai. I
Ram.
think he's talking about death.
Yeah.
That it is bound to, it is going to come eventually, or it is bound to come, but he doesn't know when.
Exactly. So he's saying, I'm not early. I know for sure that I'm going to die someday, but I don't know when. So if that is imminent, then I need to prepare for it. I need to use whatever virtue or whatever I can do to emancipate myself, to make my life worthwhile, and do everything without actually waiting. So I'm not early. I'm actually, I've started this journey having no knowledge, meaning I do not know. હું જે જાણું છું કે હું મરવાનો છું એક દિવસ, પણ ક્યારે એ હું નથી જાણતો. એટલે આ વહેલું નથી. અને the message that is giving to all of us with this is that this is one life which is very precious, and you want to be using it to the maximum for the benefit of your soul and not lose this life. So from that point of view, he's saying, હું જે જાણું છું તે નથી જાણતો. અને this lady of the house, who is the daughter-in-law of this big Seth, asks him that I don't really understand what you're trying to say with these words. To please explain to me what you mean by those words. So Atimuktak Muni is just about 8. He says, Maran avse. I know that I'm going to die for sure. Absolutely. I'm like all of us should be convinced that there is no escape from that. But I don't know when. And then on listening to this very wise daughter-in-law of this Seth, those words transform her life as well. And from that moment onwards, you are absolutely right. And I completely understand that we don't know when life is going to end. And before death comes, I need to be warned. We all need to be warned and make use of this life as best as we can for the benefit of the soul. Therefore, what this Muni is saying, that I've taken Diksha at a young age, but that doesn't mean that I've hurried. So her question was, Kem Atyarma? Kyang modu thai jatu tu? Were you in a hurry? And he's taken a wise decision. And this lady now becomes very much devout to this Muni. And at that moment, just with that short incident, she transforms her life. She accepts the religion. She takes the vows of a Jain householder, the 12 vows of a Jain Shravak or Jain Shravak Shravika, and transforms her life. Atimuktak Muni comes back to where all the Munis were and carries on with his daily routine. Once, and this is the main incident of this story, it's a rainy season and water has collected in a small depression somewhere on the road because it's rained very heavily and it's almost like a big pond. And a lot of young children were playing in that pond by floating small boats of wood or made out of leaves or whatever material was available. And this 8-year-old boy finds that game quite interesting. Obviously, he says a lot of children are playing. So he has his patra. I don't know if you've probably all seen the patras that Jain Sadhu Bhagwans and Sadhuji Bhagwans carry in their hands. They've got something with 2 or 3 or more compartments on top of each other, and they're held by a thin rope that they can carry, and it is the patra that they use to collect the food that is given to them from different households. So Atimuktak Muni puts one of his patra in this pond to see it floating. Now, as he's doing this, to him, it's a game. All the other children are playing, and he's not thinking too deeply about this. And he's very happy having started this game. I mean, we can all understand how children at that age would feel, and this is a nice game. Just then, Guru Gautam Swami comes along, and Atimuktak Muni sees him and is quite ashamed as he's playing with other children. But also Guru Gautam Swami says that this is not normal behavior for a monk, because when you put that patra in the water, the lives that are present in that body of water and everything else, you are making them suffer. You are making all that life, you're hurting them. And it is not the behavior of a monk who has taken a vow not to harm any living being. And Atimuktak Muni is very repentant, is very shamed by his act, that I've done wrong. And he is very keen to ask for forgiveness and repent this particular sin that he has committed, because that is against the vows that he has taken. So he goes to Bhagwan Mahavir and obviously Bhagavan Mahavir knows what's happened, and he asks for a prayaschit, meaning what can I do to pay penance for this sin that I've committed and the wrong that I've done. And Bhagavan Mahavir says that all you need to do is Irya Vaya Nupadi Kaman Karo. I'm sure all of you know, or many of you know, this sutra. It is recited regularly before we start the actual Chaitya Vandan. And the sutra with Tas Utri Karnanam and Anat is followed by a kausag of 4 naukar or 1 logas. And if you don't know, then 4 naukar, followed by the recitation of logas. Now, that is Iryavaya, that is done at the beginning of Pratikraman, at the beginning of Samayak, at the beginning of Chaitya Vandan. So just quickly to remind people, the sutra goes like this. Ichha karana sandisa bhagan irya vahyam padikammame. Ichham ichhami padikamiyu. Irya vahyaye virahanaye gamna gamne pan kamne biyak kamne hariyak kamne. Osa uttinga panagaddaga. Matti makda santana sankamane. Now, Ati Muktak Muni stops here and gets into a deep state of dhyan. He's thinking about Panagadagga Matti Makada. Panagadagga, Dagga Matti, Dagga Matti. Matti Makda Santana Sankamane. I'll just finish the sutra. Matti Makda Santana Sankamane. Jeme Jiva Viraya. Egindia, Eindia, Te India, Chaurindia, Panchindia, Abhyaya, Vatya, Lesya, Sangaya, Sangatya, Paryavya, Kilamya, Udavya, Thana, O Thanam, Sankamya, Jivya, O Rovya, Tas Michami Dukadam. So the sutra describes the different ways in which life of any kind, from 1 sense to 5 sense, could have been hurt in this journey by walking from one place to another or by doing things on a daily basis, and it's asking for forgiveness. Atimuktak Muni is very aware of the kinds of life forms that he would have harmed with this act of floating his patra in this pond. And he says, Me mati ane pani na jivone vina karan dubhavya. So without any cause, I have hurt the lives of that are in water, and those are in the mud that was there. And he keeps on asking for forgiveness. He asks for forgiveness for all those once sensed and other life forms that would have been harmed by his action. And Badane Kamaveche, at least asking for forgiveness. And he keeps on repeating Dagmati, a part varamvar bolwa lagya. Emma, and then his concentration in this and his level of spiritual awareness and his dhyan keeps on rising and rising. And within a short time, he gets rid of all his karmas and actually achieves Keval Gnan. Now, just imagine he has probably, there's no detail here about his previous lives, but this is a soul which has been emancipated, probably had many, many lifetimes of sadhana behind him. But in this life, just as an 8-year-old boy, he can get into this deep state of meditation of Sukla Dhyan, whereby he gets rid of all his karmas which the process starts with a simple repentance of the wrong that he has done. So the level of freedom from pride, the humility with which he starts with this, the humility with which he progresses, and the intensity with which his level of spiritual awareness and progress and the speed with which it progresses is something that would make us wonder that in spiritual terms, this is the greatest achievement for any soul ever. In whatever number of lifetimes that have gone, this would be the last, the ultimate goal for all of us. And as soon as it becomes known that Atimuktak Muni has achieved Keval Gnan, the Devas, the celestial beings, come down and have a celebration of his Keval Gnan. And now Atimuktak Muni is a Kevali Bhagwant. Now also understand that he has become a Kevali before his Guru, Guru Gautam Swami. He's only 8 years old. And as a young Keval Gnani Muni Bhagwant, Kevali Bhagwant, there's a mention here that there is a king, Jitsatru of Suryapuri, and a lot of other souls who were ready for emancipation. He explains to them the futility of relying on your lifespan, meaning that you never know when your life is going to end. And he gives sermons to many, many different people. And a lot of people become Shravaks as a result of his sermons. A lot of people become monks as a result of that, monks and nuns, Shravak and Shravika. So he spends a long time doing that. Those of you who've been to Rajasthan near Rajgruhi, there are several hills there, which is a place of pilgrimage. There is a small hill which you can climb up, and there is a small temple, a dairy, which is said to be the place where Atimuktak Muni actually achieved Keval Gnan. So in the current state of Rajasthan, near Rajgruhi Nagri, there is Rajgruhi is a town. It's currently, it's not far from where Virayatan is in that part in Bihar. Sorry, not Rajasthan, I'm talking about Bihar. So Rajgruhi Nagri Nibajuma, there are hills, and this particular place, there is a small temple devoted to Atimuktak Muni. So why so early? Have you been delayed, and is it so late? What I know that I do not know. And Iryavaya Sutra, that is all I wanted to say about this story, but I just want us to reflect on the story today. You got about 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. So it would be nice if people can switch on their videos if they want to. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for now. And before we come down to Kshamapna and ending, let's have some discussion. This story is not new. A lot of you may have heard of it, but feel free to switch on your videos if you feel like it. But you can raise your hands and ask anything.
You can also ask us in the chat, the hosts and co-hosts, if
Yeah.
you're not comfortable.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable speaking, you can just send a question on the chat as well. That's as usual.
Rajit bhai, I have Nick who wants to share an article that was in the Metro.
Mhm.
If we have your permission, then I
Yeah,
can ask him to share.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think he's just verbally going to share it.
Yeah.
Nick, if you want to put your video on. Nick, can you hear us?
Yeah. Go on, Nick.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
It was just about a gentleman who repented after many years of what he had done in his childhood.
Mhm.
And he, I think a lot of people must have read this in the Metro yesterday.
Okay.
And it's very corresponding to what we're just hearing today about repentance.
Okay. Did you want to share the story? I mean, not everybody may have.
Okay.
read it.
Uh,
Yeah.
The shopkeeper is in North London,
Mhm.
and he had a letter which was posted or delivered to him by another boy or was left in his shop.
Mhm.
And in the letter, it said about how this person had stolen an ice cream. I
Mhm.
think it was an ice cream, but he had stolen something from the shop,
Mhm.
being a teenager,
Mhm.
and he left a £10 note attached to that letter.
Mhm.
And he asked for forgiveness
Mhm.
for what he had done many, many years ago.
Mhm.
And he was begging for forgiveness, and he says, enclosing a small compensation.
Mhm.
And I think that was a very moving story for me.
Yes, absolutely.
And I thought it was so much of a Jain principle there. And you've actually said the same things today.
Yeah, good. So this was a story yesterday. So
In yesterday's Metro.
Yeah. So the other story that we were actually going to talk about does also reflect on this particular virtue of truthfulness and non-stealing. I think it's let me just see. And I think there are two other stories about Nagadat. And maybe I'm mixing up something, but yes, there are a lot of other stories which reflect all the 5 great vows or 5 minor vows of a Jain householder, and which talk about non-stealing. But thank you very much, Nick, for sharing this. And as you just decided, I'm sure it's been inspiring for everybody. Great. Anybody else has got a comment? Sudhir bhai?
Good evening, Dr. Ajit bhai. I must say your lectures are very inspiring, very interesting. I've really enjoyed listening to them. Missed last week's because I was away, but I'm sure I'll catch up on the internet as usual. And many times you mentioned articles, and every time after the lectures, I have tried in Google, and I got the information which you talked about in more detail. which makes the lectures very interesting as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I'm really inspired.
No, I'm grateful that all of you are listening carefully and trying to digest. That's the aim of these classes. Any other questions on today's Atimukta Muni? I mean, the questions that often arise, I mean, if the question is answered, what does an 8-year-old know about life? And how does an 8-year-old decide that he wants to give up his worldly life and become a monk? So for a lot of us, that seems to be a very prominent sign of that the times were probably not fair. And even in this day and age, these questions have been asked when very young people become monks and nuns. And a similar question was asked when we had Astha, who, as most of you know, was somebody who grew up here and is now currently a Sadhviji at a very young age as well. So that is one question, but this story from that aspect as well is very inspiring, that nobody knows when the time will come when we meet our end for this life. Nick, your hands up. Go on.
It was more about Prashatap I was thinking about,
Mhm.
rather than stealing, which
Yeah.
is true, but it was more the Prashatap that how this person felt. And that's what made an impact for me.
Absolutely. And that's something that had stayed with him for all these years until he got the courage to say sorry and send some compensation. So that courage is also very inspiring. But the fact that we all live with certain things that we regret, that things that we are unhappy about, but trying to go to that person and ask for forgiveness and say Michami Dukadam, or I'm sorry, does take a lot of courage. We have to give up a lot of our pride. And that, you're absolutely right, is the Paschatap, the process itself. Okay. Thanks. Sheilaben?
જ્યારે આ નાના નાના બાળકો દીક્ષા લે છે ત્યાર પછી એ લોકોને ત્યાં એજ્યુકેશન ભલે ધર્મનું જે સૂત્ર છે કે બીજું પણ ધર્મનું દેવાતું હશે પણ એના સિવાયનું એજ્યુકેશન અપાય છે કે કેવી રીતે હોય છે એ જરા
Sheilaben,
જી
if you're starting on a spiritual life, the concept is that you're taking a vow of absolute non-violence, absolute truth, absolute non-stealing, absolute celibacy, and absolute non-possessiveness. All our education about life is to help us expand our horizons to an extent, but most of our graduate education at level is career oriented, meaning that we want to become or get the education to perform a role in society, to earn a living, and to, along the process, expand our minds. If you look at the conversations that we have with our children who are seeking university and all the education syllabuses, that's all it is focused on. Though we do say, yes, we want to expand our minds and education is important, but the depth of religious education, if you're talking about the insight of monks about life as such that we live, I've always found that monks and nuns have a much clearer understanding of our lives and our ups and downs, and an insight into how we react more detrimentally to our welfare in that life without ever having experienced that in this life. So they actually understand the conflicts in our relationships, the conflicts in our jobs. And a lot of those Maharaj Sahibs, monks and nuns have never actually done the kinds of things that we have. But it's the insight that it is given. So the importance of your question about the importance of sansaric education, for them,
It's nothing.
it's nothing. But I mean, and their level of education, some of the fundamentals that they need to learn is one, the languages, Prakrit, Sanskrit, and there are essential texts that they need to learn. And what those texts actually teaches them everything. And a lot of the young monks and nuns are brilliant. I mean, if you just listen to their insights into all kinds of things, you can't actually be not inspired by their intellect and their level of education.
Because I've never spoken with a nun or a Maharaj Sahib, never.
I think there are so many YouTube videos. If you listen to some of their sermons,
Yeah,
you will understand.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Darshana has a question
Uh-huh.
that she wants to ask. Darshana, can I ask you to ask the question yourself, please? I'm going to unmute you. Bear with me.
Hi, Ajit Bhai.
Hello, Darshana.
So my question is about when people or monks get enlightened, how many lifetimes in advance do they know they're getting enlightened? And also, how comes they still have karmas to shed once they become enlightened?
So I think in terms of what you mean by enlightenment, there are various levels to it. I mean, I think that is what your question is referring to. The ultimate enlightenment and the ultimate goal is the achievement of Keval Gnan, and that is the end of the cycle of life and death. From that life onwards, when the Ayushya for that life ends, that soul will go to moksha. The soul, the soul themselves may not know when that level of enlightenment, Keval Gnan, is going to come to them, or they are going to achieve that. Other Gnani Bhagwans, meaning Tirthankar Paramatmas and other Keval Gnanis would know. So, for example, in the story that I'm talking about Arnika Putra, I mentioned Patliputra, the city, and that was built around a tree of a plant called Patal. From that name, the city of Patliputra was named, and because that tree was actually flowering very abundantly, that city was also called Kusumpur. Kusum is flowers, Kusumpur. Pur is a town or a village or a city, whatever you want to call it. That mention in this reference that I'm looked at is mentioned that that tree is Ek Autari, meaning that from that life, their next life will be their last life, meaning that they will achieve a human life and achieve Keval Gnan and Moksha from that life. So Kevali Bhagwans and Gnanis would know. However, the other aspect of your question that you may mean or you may not have realized, the enlightenment that we talk about, meaning that which shortens our journey in this sansar significantly, is the first step towards spiritual development. That level of enlightenment is called samyaktva. Again, that is not necessarily known in advance. And when that happens, the person who actually gets that to that level may themselves not necessarily know it, that they have crossed that barrier and entered a realm which has significantly shortened their future journey in this sansar. So the achievement of samyaktva is a goal that is something that all of us should be aspiring for. And Bharat Bhai just reminded us last week that Nalin Bhai, who has come, had a Sibir of 4 days, Bharat Bhai? Was it 4 days?
5 days, Ajit bhai.
5 days.
And prior to that, they had 4 days of pre-Samyak Darshan, totally about 9 days.
9 days, and this was the only topic. They were talking about how do you achieve Samyaktva, and there are fantastic books written on that. But Samyaktva is about getting rid of that very severe knot of rag and dvesh, meaning attachment and dislike or hatred, and for the soul to get to that level near the position where you recognize the knot, meaning not overtly, but spiritually, and then you get to making an effort that is so strong that you pierce that knot. That is called Granthi Bhed. And at that moment, you achieve Keval Gnan. And spiritually, that is a state of enlightenment as well. Again, prior to that, apart from Gnani, nobody would know. All Tirthankar Bhagwans. So, for example, Bhagwan Mahavir achieved that in his first life that is described as Naisar, and their lives are described prior to them becoming Tirthankars. They are only counted from the time that they achieve Samyaktva. The lives before achievement of Samyaktva has no value. So our goal in life, as I think Nalin Bhai was, I didn't hear him, but Bharat Bhai had attended all his sermons or his lectures, and they were concentrating on Granthi Bhed, on Samyaktva. But that is a very good advanced topic that we can discuss at some stage. But we all need to be ready to go that far. You tell me, and we'll carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dashraman.
Ketan, I think you have raised hand.
Yes, Ajit Bhai, a question for you.
Yeah.
How big a step is this last step, for example, for an 8-year-old to gain Kevagnan? Is that a big step compared to all the previous lives leading up to that point, or is it just a very small step in the long sequence?
Well, in many ways, it's a huge step. But a huge step may not take very long. And it depends on the readiness of that particular soul and what sort of development they've had in their previous lives. But that may not necessarily be very prolonged either. So, for example, Bhagwan Rushabdev's mother, Marudeva Mata, in the life prior to her becoming Marudeva Mata and the mother of Bhagwan Rushabdev, she was a tree. Her soul was a tree. And that was her first life after having escaped Nigodh. And prior to that, there was no preparation. in the life as Bhagwan Rushabdev's mother, Marudeva Mata, she needed a very simple inspiration of seeing. So she had spent years, or she had spent a long time worrying about her son who had left his comfort in the palace and become a monk and was going from place to place. And she was so sad and weepy and constantly crying out for her son, Bhagwan Rushabdev, and says, where is he? What is he? And when he achieves Keval Gnan, Bhagwan Rushabdev, Bharat Chakravarti, his son and her grandson, says that you've been crying so much for Rushabdev, my dad, and your son. Let me show you what he's achieved. So he takes her on an elephant to see Bhagwan Rushabdev sitting in the Samvasran. And all she sees, I mean, remember her previous life, there is no other spiritual development. All she sees is how all the Saibi, everything that surrounds a Samvasran, all the devs and everybody who is there, and the respect that he is being shown. And she says, what have I been worried about? Why have I had so much attachment to my son? What is the virtue in any of this? What is the value of this? And her thought process starts on that, and spiritually, she just progresses. And within this short time, while she's just sitting on that elephant, Ambadi Upari Betha che, and she achieves Keval. So the duration, there are many stories like that. So we know of these 1500 tapasis who are on their journey to Bhagwan Rushabdev or Bhagwan Mahavir with Gautam Swami to take Diksha. And just on the way from Astapad Parvat to Bhagwan Mahavir Swami where he is, by the time they reach the Samvasran, all 1500 of them have achieved Keval Gnan. So it's a huge effort, it's a huge step. Spiritually, that is like, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's more than anything else that anybody has ever achieved in their life. It's got no comparison with any material achievements at all. So it is a huge step, but does it take a very long time? Yes, it can. Chances are for most of us, it's going to take a few million lifetimes from now. But can it be very short? Yes, it can. So that's something that we need to focus on. And we talk about what is that preparation in our Wednesday classes that you attend, Ketan Bhai. Thank you. I think I'm glad that you're all asking questions. I'm hoping that the others will feel a bit more encouraged and courageous next time, so we can make this class a bit more interactive. Thank you. Okay. I won't go back to the slides, but let's start with Shamapna. And Ashwin Bhai, thank you for sharing your video. So I know who Ashwin Bhai is now. Thank you. જીનાજ્ઞા વિરુદ્ધ કંઈ પણ બોલાયું હોય કે વિચારાયું તે સ્વયંમનોચન કાય કરી તસ્મિચ્છામિ દુગ્ધમ. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatmas and against the teachings of Dharma, I ask for forgiveness in mind, speech and body. Ichchami dukadam. Sarvamangalamangelyam Sarvakalyanakaranam Pradhanam Sarvadharmanam Jainam Jaiti Sasanam. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next week.